Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another PS4 tutorial. So following the theme of revisiting previous methods of jailbreaking the PS4 using different devices to see how they've evolved over time, I decided to update my PPPwn WRT project, which allows you to jailbreak your PS4 using an OpenWRT based router. Now OpenWRT is an open source custom firmware for routers that supports hundreds of different makes and models of routers and even Raspberry Pi models too. So the benefit of using a router to jailbreak your PS4, first off, once the jailbreak is complete, we can now run a PPPoE server on the router to allow the PS4 to connect to the internet without having to switch network settings on the console. You can generally get better internet pass-through when using a router as well, since you can take advantage of its built-in Wi-Fi radios or use one of the spare LAN ports to pass through a wired internet connection. Also, with multiple LAN ports, you can connect a computer so it can access the PS4 over the network for remote debugging, FTP access, or remote package installing. Now this project has all of that built in, along with DNS blockers to prevent system updates when connected to the internet, shutdown detection that will relaunch the jailbreak after it detects a console reboot, gold hen detection which will stop the router from running the jailbreak after recovering from rest mode, allowing the internet pass-through to continue, and a web panel to adjust settings, start and stop the jailbreak, and load bin loader payloads. There's also options to load the jailbreak by pressing a button on the router, or load it from the web panel or from the Lucy web interface. The project is based on Stugid's pi-pwn project for the Raspberry Pis, so of course it will work with Raspberry Pis running OpenWRT, and with a Raspberry Pi you can add an additional Ethernet port to pass through the internet, or connect a better USB Wi-Fi adapter to provide better internet pass-through over Wi-Fi. So anyway, that is the general TLDR. So let's go ahead and get into the setup here. Now, I'm not going to be showing how to install OpenWRT on your specific router because, of course, every router is different and therefore it installs differently depending on what brand and model of router you have. So you can head to the table of hardware and then just enter your router. So I have an AVM Fritzbox 7530, which is this one right here. And I can click on this link and it will give me detailed instructions on exactly how to install OpenWRT on my specific router, and of course it also supports Raspberry Pis as well. If I type in Raspberry Pi, you can see we've got all these different makes and models of Raspberry Pis that are also supported. So anyway, once you've got OpenWRT set up and installed on your router, you can just head to either openwrt.lan in your web browser or go to the IP address of your router on your network, and that will take you to the authorization page. Now, we're doing this from a stock system, which is what I recommend for this. So the first thing we're going to do is log in and then go to password confirmation and just create a password just to get rid of that annoying notification. Then we'll log out and log back in with a password, so that notification is gone. Then we can head to network and interfaces, and we're just going to go to edit the LAN interface and change the IPv4 address to a different subnet. So it's 192.168.2.1 instead of 1.1. That's because my home router is using 1.1 and I don't want this to conflict with my home network. So I'm just going to give it a different address range there and save. And then from there, what we can do is head on over to network and wireless. And I need to give this router an internet connection so it can install everything needed for the exploit. So the way I'm going to do this, you could just plug it in via a LAN cable and give it a wired connection. But in my case, I'm going to give this a wireless connection to my home network. So I'm just going to pick one of the Wi-Fi radios here and click scan, and this will scan for Wi-Fi networks. And then I'm going to select my home Wi-Fi network here and join the network. Enter the wireless passkey for your network, and then we can click submit. And then we should be able to click save, and then save and apply and keep settings. And what that should do is it will change the address range of the LAN network to 192.168.2.1. And then from there, it will also connect to my home network here through the Wi-Fi connection as a client, just like any other computer or device on your network that's connecting to your router. So this is now connected to my home network. And if I head to network and go to diagnostics, we can run a ping command on openwrt.org to see if we get a response to make sure that our router is connected to the internet. And as you can see, it is indeed connected. So that means we have everything fully set up and ready. So what we can do now is basically remote into this router through SSH so that we can install the exploit on it. So to do this, we can use MOBA Xterm, which I'll leave a download link in the description. You can also use PuTTY, of course. We can go to the session here and create a new SSH session, with the remote host being either the IP address of the router on the network, which if you remember I set to 2.1, or of course you could use the host name openwrt.lan, and then the username is going to be root, and then the password will be the password that you set, port 22. So we click OK, we will accept. It'll ask for the password which we set earlier, so we'll enter the password and we'll go ahead and save that to the password manager. And there we go, we now have access to the router through the terminal. Okay, so now we just need to run the install script by copying the command here from the repo, from the setup portion, and just paste it in here. And then once that's done, we can press enter to actually run the install script. And then it's going to basically ask you a bunch of questions, and we'll just go through it rapid fire here, because you might want to enable and disable certain features depending on, you know, how much storage space you have access to on your device. So the first question here is what firmware your PS4 is on. So I'm on 11.0, so I'll enter number 9 for 11.0. Then it asks us about our network interface. So the normal network interface on OpenWRT routers is BR-LAN. So I'll select that number 15 for BR-LAN and press enter. Then it asks you what LAN port your PS4 is going to be connected to. So I'll connect my PS4 to LAN port 4. So that's the LAN port I will use on my router. So I will select number 4. Then it asks us if we want to add another device to connect FTP and bin loader and other network features. So I'll say yes, and I'll add LAN port 3. This is just so that I can connect my computer to LAN port 3 to be on the same network, so that it can also access the PS4 over the network. So I'll add another LAN port so I can connect my computer. Then it asks us if we want to add any more LAN ports. I'll enter N for no, because 2 will be fine for me. Then it asks us for a timeout. This is how long you want the exploit to run until it restarts in case it gets stuck and hangs. The default is 5 minutes, so I'll just enter 5 and press enter. So now it's asking if we want to change our default subnet. You only need to do this if you have like another network interface on your device that's using the same IP addresses, and that way it would cause a conflict, and then you can change them in this install script if you want to avoid conflicts. But if nothing on your network is using 192.168.3.x, then you should be fine to just enter N for no and just leave them as default. Same with the username and password. You can change your PPPoE username and password for the PS4 if you want to, or you can just leave the defaults, which is PPP and PPP for the user ID and password. So I'll enter N for no and just stick with the default username and password. Would you like the PS4 to connect to the internet after loading Pwn? I'll say yes. Do you want to run Pwn on startup? I'll say yes, so that when we load our router, it'll automatically run the jailbreak. Do you want to detect a console shutdown and relaunch Pwn? I'll enter Y for yes for this as well. So that is if I restart the console, it will automatically relaunch the exploit to re-jailbreak it. Enable gold hen detection for rest mode support. I will enter yes for this. This does require quite a bit of storage space, so if you're limited on storage capacity, you probably don't want to enable this. But this will prevent the console from rerunning the jailbreak after recovering from rest mode, so it can continue using the internet pass-through if gold hen is already running. So I'll enter Y for yes to enable this. Obviously, you can customize these settings how you like, and you can edit these settings afterwards. So gold hen detection enabled. Do you want to power down the router after Pwn loads successfully? I'll say no, because we're doing internet pass-throughs. Would you like to enable a web panel to load payloads and adjust the settings? I'll enter yes. This will just install the kind of pi-pwn web panel, which will allow you to adjust the exploit settings, restart the exploits, and edit all of the settings that we're configuring here. So might as well enable this if you have enough storage space. So download the bin loader payloads. This is also very heavy on storage, which will download all of the PS4 payloads that you can launch from the web panel from the device. So I'll enter Y for yes, because again, I have enough storage on this router. Now, do you want to run Pwn from the Lucy web interface? This is kind of if you don't install the web panel because you don't have enough space, you could run it from the Lucy web interface instead. But again, this also does take up a bit of storage too, not as much as the web panel, but I'll also go ahead and enable this as well. Okay, and the last two options here, do you want to use the device's LEDs to indicate when Pwn is running? I'll enter Y for yes, and I'll enter the LED for red info. So this is just if you want a certain LED on your device to blink while the exploit is running, so that you can see just by looking at the router if it is running or not. So I'll use the red info LED. And then finally, do you want the option to load Pwn by pressing a button on the device? So I can just press like the WPS button and have that run the exploit manually. So I'll enter Y for yes just to add this feature. and I'll use option 6 for WPS. And there we go. So once you've answered all of those questions, it should restart the router and everything should now be applied. Okay, so now I can plug an Ethernet cable between the PS4's LAN port and LAN port 4 on the router in order for this to work. And then also, if this is your first time running the exploit, you'll need to copy the goldhen.bin file, which you can download from the goldhen releases repo, which I will leave in the description. But you copy the goldhen.bin file to the root of a FAT32 or exFAT formatted USB drive, and then you can plug that into your console so that when you run the jailbreak, it will load that payload from the USB, but it will also copy it to the internal storage so that the next time you want to load it, it will just run it from the internal storage so that the USB drive will not be needed. So the USB drive is only needed for the first time that you run the jailbreak with goldhen. So there we go, that should be everything we need there. So now we can go ahead and switch on over to our PS4. Okay, so once we're on the PS4, we're gonna head over to our settings. We're gonna go to network, set up an internet connection using a LAN cable, using custom settings. And then of course, once it thinks about it for a little while, it'll give us the option to select PPPoE. So select that option, then enter the user ID and password that you used in the install script. So by default, it's set to PPP for the user ID and password. But obviously, if you changed it in the install script, then select whatever you changed it to. And then we can click next, and then automatic, and do not use a proxy server. And that is basically it. All we have to do is go to system and system information and wait to see if it runs the exploit. Now, because in the install script, we told it to run the exploit on router startup, that means it is going to start trying to run it when the router boots up. Okay, and there it goes. So cannot connect to network. And then we should see our IP address change. So it's now running the jailbreak on our PS4. And all we have to do is wait for this to be successful. And of course, I can also see that the info LED is blinking, showing that it's trying to run the exploit. The way that is set up right now is that it will blink when it is running the jailbreak. And if you have shutdown detection enabled, it will be a solid LED. So you'll get a solid LED, meaning shutdown detection is enabled and it's waiting for a potential shutdown to then try and rerun the jailbreak. And when it does run the jailbreak, it will be blinking. The LED will be blinking to show that it is running. And as you can see there, that was successful. And then once the jailbreak is complete, it will eventually switch back over again to the PPPoE server, which will share the internet connection with the console if you have enabled that option. But as you can see, we've got goldhen up and running right here. So it is all good. Now, one important thing to mention with goldhen is make sure if you go into the settings that this enable PPPoE patch, if you have this option, if you're using one of the older goldhen versions, this option will not be there. But if that option is there, make sure that option is disabled if you want the internet pass-through feature. Otherwise, it will not be able to share the internet connection with the PS4 if the PPPoE patch option in goldhen is enabled. But anyway, as you can see there, we now have an internet connection. So it has regained a connection with PPPoE. So we're now connected back up to the internet, which means if I head over to the web browser here, I should be able to access the internet if we go to, say, Google. So we'll head over to Google. And you can see we do, in fact, have a working internet connection. So that has now been passed through by the router. And that is the great thing about this, is when we reboot with shutdown detection enabled, it will detect that the console has shut down, and then it will try and rerun the jailbreak again once the console reboots. And not only that, but we also have goldhen detection enabled as well, which means when we put the system into rest mode, when we're already running the jailbreak, and then we recover the console from rest mode, if you have goldhen detection enabled, it should not try and rerun the jailbreak again. It will just continue with internet pass-through because the console's already jailbroken. So if you just keep this router running indefinitely, you've basically, got an all-in-one solution all up and running and ready to go. So if you've enabled the web panel, you can go to http:// you do need to enter that, and then do pppwn.local:8080, or the IP address of the router on the network, which is usually 192.168.3.1:8080, will take you to the pi-pwn web panel here, which has pretty much all of the same options that were in that project. You can change the PS4 LAN port here if you want it to be on a different LAN port. You can also change the firmware version if you want to connect the router to a different console running a different firmware to jailbreak that. You can change the timeout from here. You can also change the activity LED. If you want to use a different LED to indicate when the exploit is running, or if you don't want any LEDs flashing when the exploit is running, you can change it to none. And the same with a button. If you want to be able to press a button to run the jailbreak on the router, then you can select which button to use here, or none if you don't want any buttons to be used. You've also got your C++ options so that you can modify the exploit to kind of work better on your console. If you have one of the problematic consoles where the exploit is more unstable, then you can adjust the specific timing settings here and the buffer size to try and make it more reliable on your console. You've got this option here to use the original source IP. This is actually very handy for some consoles. There are some consoles that just will not be able to be jailbroken unless this option is enabled. So if you're having trouble, make sure you try with that option enabled. And then obviously you've got your gold hen detection, console shutdown detection. Verbose pwn log allows you to actually view the logs of the exploit running. And then you've also got obviously enabling the console internet access. Run pwn on startup, you can enable or disable that, and the DNS blocker, which is enabled by default, which means updates are being blocked. So if I try and go to something like system software update, it's going to tell me it cannot connect to the server because the updates are being blocked by the router. So that's also working there as well. Of course, you can also access the Lucy web interface by going to openwrt.lan, and that will again take you over there, and then you can just log in to the router page. If you want to customize any of the settings on the router, you can do so from here. Not only that, but if you enabled the ability to run the exploit from the Lucy interface, you can head to system and you'll have a new option called custom commands. And in there is the command that you can run to just run the exploit. So that can also be run from here as well. So you've got a few options there. You can run it from there. You can also, of course, run it from this web panel here as well. You can restart pwn to run the jailbreak or stop it if it's already running. And also reboot the router from here as well. You've also got network settings, so you can change the PPP username and password, the guest username and password, and also the gateway address if you want to change it to a different address range so it doesn't conflict with anything else on your network. We also have the ability to load payloads from here as well. Now that needs to be enabled in the gold hen settings by going to the server settings and enabling the bin loader server. And then from there you can go into the internet browser and go back to that page and load payloads, and then you can select any of the payloads that you want to run, like the disable updates payload, for instance, and you can see payload received from the router, and it is now loaded on the console, PS4 firmware 11.0. So that's how you get the payloads loaded. And then also, of course, because we're using a router and we have multiple LAN ports in most cases, what you can also do is plug in your computer to one of the other LAN ports that we added. So I added LAN port 3 as well as LAN port 4. So LAN port 4 was for the PS4, but LAN port 3 was so I can connect another device like a computer to the router, and it will be on the same network as the PS4, allowing me to remotely access it for FTP and for remote package installing and anything else that I want to do there. So just to show how that works, if we head over to gold hen and enable the FTP server by going to the server settings, enable FTP server. And then from here, what we can do is switch on over to our computer. I've plugged my computer's Ethernet cable into LAN port 3, and it can connect through the guest account, which is why we have a guest account set up. So what we can do is head over to our network settings here, go to network and internet settings. And then from here, if I go down to dial up, I can select the dial up option. This probably won't be here for you, so let's just get rid of that. And what we'll do is we'll set up a new connection. And then from here, we can connect to the internet and click next. We're going to use broadband PPPoE. And then for the username, we will use our guest account login details, which by default is username guest and password PPP. I'll call the connection PS4, and then we will connect. And that will connect through the router to the same network that the PS4 is connected to so that we can access it over the network here. So we'll just give this a few seconds. There we go. You're connected to the internet. So we're now connected through that router through PPPoE. So we can connect on FTP by using the IP address of the PS4, which by default is 192.168.3.11, unless you changed it, of course, port number 2121. And there we go. We have remote access to our PS4 over the network, and we'll get the fastest possible transfer speeds when transferring large files through FTP or through the remote package installer or FPKGI or whatever you're using to install things or copy files from your computer to your PS4, because it's connected directly via a LAN cable to the router, so you'll get the best possible transfer speeds. So that is the advantage of using a router setup when you have multiple LAN ports as well. You can also access your console remotely, also for trainers and, remote debugging and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the benefits there of using a router to try and jailbreak your console. And I know a lot of people will have like spare routers lying around their house because, of course, ISPs typically send you a new router every time you switch internet service providers. At least here in the UK, that's pretty common practice where you'll just have like old routers from previous ISPs that you used to use, and they may just be sitting around collecting dust when you could use them to load the jailbreak on your PS4 and pass through the internet connection and create this kind of all-in-one jailbreak solution for your console. Obviously, not all routers have enough storage space to install everything that I showed here, but you can go with a more basic setup, like instead of enabling things like shutdown detection and gold hen detection and all of that kind of stuff, what you can do instead is just select the option to use a button on the router to trigger the exploit and leave everything else off so it's not using as much storage space. And then that way, whenever you load up your PS4, you can just press that button on the router and it will run the jailbreak and you'll be up and running. So that is one way to do it, or you can just trigger it from SSH or from the Lucy web interface without installing the larger web panel. So there's lots of different ways that you can customize this to kind of meet your requirements, especially if you have specific limited storage that you have to deal with your specific router. Obviously, you can also, some routers have USB ports, so you can add USB storage and then install it onto that by just putting the install script on your USB and then installing it from that, and it will install everything onto the USB drive so you have more space. That's another option. But anyway, the idea is just that it's customizable so that you can set it up the way you want. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And once again, as always, I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video.